Hey everyone! Did you watch a lot of Unsolved Mysteries in the 90s like I did? This week I will be discussing several cases that have stuck with me over the years. Some I heard about as a kid, and some I came across when rewatching the show as an adult. Just be warned, sensitive topics will be discussed. They include murder, missing children with tragic updates, and hostage situations. For those who haven't seen my videos before, I'm Jennifer Woods, and I usually talk about TV movies, but I also discuss cult classics, true crime, and classic 80s, 90s TV episodes on occasion. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss my newest content. The first case I would like to discuss today originally aired in May 1989 and then again with an update in November 1990. This is the tragic story of Kari Lynn Nixon, a 16-year-old who went missing on June 22, 1987 in a relatively safe neighborhood in Osable Forks, New York, while going to the store around 9:30 at night. The case remained unsolved until January 1994. I've used the Unsolved Mysteries episode and the Unsolved Mysteries Wiki fandom.com page for research on this. The crime was also the subject of a Nightmare Next Door episode from Season 4 entitled Small Town Secret, so that 2014 episode has also influenced my thoughts on this case. But back to the Unsolved Mysteries episode. Robert Stack states Kari Lynn Nixon was a great student and a softball player. She went to the store around 9:30 one night to buy snack food for her father. She took $20 with her, and because it was only 1987, it apparently only cost $3 to buy a bag of junk food, a couple of orange sodas, and a gallon of milk. Or at least that's what we're led to believe from the Unsolved Mysteries reenactment, and I have no reason to doubt that it's true. I read on the wikifandom.com page that her younger sister Lori played her in the reenactment of events. The last known sighting of Kari occurred around 10:05 p.m. This sighting occurred when she passed a neighbor on the street and said hi. By 10:10, she had vanished, about 700 feet from her home. I can only imagine her family's pain, not having answers for the longest time, not knowing where their loved one is, if she's alive, if she's in danger, or if she's no longer among the living, so my heart goes out to them. I found out from the wiki page that Kari's father, Gary, died in 2011. Also, Kari's younger brother, Jonathan, passed on in 2007. He'd had ALS. This makes me very sad to hear how much this poor family has had to endure. An investigator named Richard Sypek shares the fact that Kari had written letters stating that she wanted to move to Hawaii, Florida, or California when she turned 18. I think it's a stretch, though, to suggest that implies she would just randomly take off at age 16 while running a simple errand for her father. Captain Robert B. Liu, who reminds me a little bit of actor Tim Robbins, believed this to be an abduction because he couldn't imagine a girl running away in sweatpants, carrying only $20 with her. And I found it hard to believe she ran away as well. Why would she have gone to the store and bought the snacks for her father if she was just planning to run away? She didn't even have a car. In the first airing of this case, it was stated that a mysterious letter from Flint, Michigan suggested that Kari might be found in the Utahville area of South Carolina, so her family put up posters there. And a woman named Shirley Knappel came forward after viewing one of the posters, stating that she had interacted with two young girls about 3 weeks earlier, one of them being introduced to her as Kari from New York. From what she said, it sounded like she was given the girl's full name, though it might just have been the first name, I'm not sure. And I don't think it's likely the woman was sure because the memory can be a tricky thing. Remember, she was recalling these details 3 weeks later after having viewed a missing poster. She could have been merging info from the poster with info from her memory. And it sounds to me that is very likely what happened because this lead turned out to be a dead end. The second big tip occurred when a girl resembling Kari was spotted in a video recording of a New Kids on the Block concert. This was another questionable sighting. Yes, she has similar hair. So did lots of girls in the 80s and early 90s. An enhanced photo was made of the girl in the video. I didn't think the quality was the best, but apparently they could tell that she had multiple piercings in her ear, just like Kari. In profile, I admit this girl did look a bit like the missing teen. The sad reality is that Kari probably didn't even know who New Kids on the Block was when she went missing, and from what would be discovered in 1994, she died before they hit it big in the States. In January 1994, several years after the 2 episodes of Unsolved Mysteries aired, a bank robber named Robert Anthony Jones came forward and confessed to Kari's killing, using information on her death as a bargaining chip. He led the police to Kari's body. She was buried near a family cabin in the woods. It was a random attack, basically the stereotypical abduction scenario. I won't go into specifics about her final hours out of respect for her dignity, but it was a sad conclusion to a troubling case, and it goes to show just how unreliable witnesses can be. I suspect that those involved in investigating the case may have realized that the New Kids on the Block lead was a stretch. After all, the likelihood of her being a runaway was slim to none, but I think it's possible, and I'm just speculating here, that they figured the publicity would really breathe new life into the case. We are shown a video plea made by the band, and by Jordan and Jonathan Knight in particular. It was sweet to see them doing what they could to help out. Unfortunately, the case would be solved years later in a random way and would not be the ending anyone hoped for. One of the craziest, most infuriating cases I've heard about was featured on the Diabolical Minds episode of Unsolved Mysteries in Season 4. It's the murders of Joanne Rogers and her 2 teen daughters, Michelle and Christe. The 3 ladies were on vacation in Florida, and I know from other sources such as Dead Set on Vacation in Season 2 of Murder in Paradise that they were there because Michelle had recently revealed some horrific secrets involving something her uncle was doing to her, and the women just needed to get away for some relaxing fun so they could leave their troubles behind them for a short period of time. With that in mind, it's especially heartbreaking to know what happened to them, and my heart absolutely shatters for the husband-father who stayed behind to care for the animals on his dairy farm and went on to be the sole survivor and his family. I got a real sense of his personality from interviews I've seen. From what I learned, he and Joanne had been together since high school. Hal says in the episode of Murder in Paradise that Michelle was introverted like him and Christe was more sociable like her mother. The Unsolved Mysteries episode aired before the case was solved, of course, this being Unsolved Mysteries, and Robert Stack talks about how the 3 women from Ohio arrived in Tampa on June 1st, 1989. It should have been their last day or 2 in Florida. They came so close to making it back safely, but then their bodies were found floating in Tampa Bay a few days later. Foul play was evident. Hal Rogers realized that something was wrong when his wife and daughters didn't arrive home by Tuesday of the following week. He had expected them to return sometime during the weekend or Monday at the latest. He became increasingly worried when he discovered that his wife hadn't contacted her mother either. A sociologist named Jack Levin explains that this was a particularly difficult case to solve because male serial killers don't have that personal link to their victims and don't tend to leave behind much evidence. Something I learned from this case is that while it's always dangerous to go off alone with a stranger, it's especially dangerous to go on a boat with them because then you truly are at their mercy. It's the same with a plane ride. You do not want to get on a boat or a plane with a stranger. At least in a car, there's a slim chance you can escape if things get weird, but even then it's difficult, especially if they have half a brain and plan ahead to keep you at their mercy. So bottom line, it's never safe to accept any kind of ride from a stranger. 1989 wasn't a completely innocent time, but I can see how it would probably have been more so than now. Special Agent Jana Monroe from the FBI states in the episode that the crime was clearly random due to the fact that these women were on a trip and not staying in any one place for long. The guilty party would have selected them and planned ahead, but not too far ahead, since he would have had only a small window of time to target them. She thinks he must have gained their trust and not looked like someone who would cause them harm. So that gives some clues to his appearance. The women's car was found at a boat ramp about a week after they were last seen. Inside the car was a note with instructions to that location. It was clear from the note that they were meeting someone at the ramp, and it sounded like this person had a blue and white boat. Stack states that the conclusion the investigators came to was that the women were planning on going on a boat with someone and that it very likely could have been 2 people they were meeting up with. This turned out to be false. When the case was solved, it was discovered that there was only 1 man involved. Detective Sindra Cummings states in the episode that she thinks the women were lulled into a false sense of security. Jana Moore says she believes that whoever did this will do it again if he hasn't already. She does think, though, that he did not expect the women to be found so quickly and will probably learn from this mistake. I will say that it is good luck that Joanne and her daughters were found and that there was able to be that little bit of closure for the ones they left behind. I don't think the case would have been solved without the bodies. I don't think there would have been enough evidence of foul play if their bodies hadn't been found. But who knows? The episode of Unsolved Mysteries did mention a sighting of a man placing a cooler inside of a blue and white boat attached to what could have been a Ford Bronco or Chevy Blazer. You can hear more about the case in the 2-part episode of On the Case with Paula Zahn entitled Murder at Sunset, but I can't find this episode online to stream anymore. It might depend on region. There is also an episode of Forensic Files titled Waterlogged about this case. And there's the episode of Murder in Paradise. So this is, what I'm about to go over is information that you learn from these other episodes as opposed to the Unsolved Mysteries episode. First of all, the women did not go on vacations like this. It was a first for them. So I've concluded that they were novices and their inexperience may have made them more vulnerable to someone with bad intent. It makes it especially heartbreaking to know that this was the big adventure of their lifetime, and it ended the way it did. Also, the women's identities were not immediately known, of course, since they were vacationers, and they had not been reported missing yet. The reason they were found so soon is likely due to the heat, and that seemed to allow for decomposition that resulted in them rising to the surface. It was a hotel manager who alerted the police to the fact that these 3 women didn't check out of their room. And this was what led to Hal Rogers being contacted. They were still alive when they were thrown overboard. This was also stated in the Unsolved Mysteries episode. In Waterlogged, it is mentioned that Hal was a suspect because of his cold demeanor. Based on what I learned about him in the Murder in Paradise episode, I think this was just him being introverted. He did have an alibi since he ate out. In Murder in Paradise, it is also stated that his brother John was a suspect due to what he did to Michelle. There was speculation that a hit might have been involved, but that didn't turn out to be the case. I also read the true crime book Death Cruise by Dawn Davis. That's another resource if you are interested. There are lots of books and programs out there about the Rogers family. It definitely stands out to me as the kind of outcome we true crime lovers crave. It's amazing how it was eventually solved. The handwriting on the note mentioned earlier was Joanne's, but there was also a brochure with handwriting from a mystery person who had written out directions to the hotel that was also found in the car, per the Waterlogged episode. The person capitalized the T in the middle of a word, and the Y was distinctive as well. He wrote the Y several different ways throughout the note. So each time he wrote the letter Y, it was a little different, and that stuck out as unique. So that handwriting sample was displayed to the public on a billboard, and a woman named Joanne Steffi knew this weird contractor named Oba Chandler, thought he was a very suspicious character, and tracked down his handwriting on a receipt from him so that she could prove his guilt. Thank goodness for women who stick their noses into other people's business and end up solving murder mysteries, as opposed to the ones who stick their noses where they don't belong and cause more trouble for everyone. On the Unsolved Mysteries update, it states that the tip came from a viewer, but I don't think that's correct. I think Joanne Steffi knew about the case because she was from the area. Oba Chandler turned out to be responsible for a similar attack on a Canadian woman 2 weeks prior to the murders. The victim in that case survived. Chandler would eventually be executed in 2011 per Wikipedia, and you can read more about him on Wikipedia. And by the way, in case you're wondering, the handwriting wasn't the only evidence they had against him. They had some other evidence. The Unsolved Mysteries episode mentioned a palm print on the brochure, and I believe that was true. That was a part of the update on Unsolved Mysteries that was true. It just wasn't the full story. I find myself being drawn to some of the supernatural tales on Unsolved Mysteries, and one of the most memorable for me was the case of Teresita Basa, the spirit who helped solve her own murder. Teresita Basa was a respiratory therapist at a hospital who had moved to the U.S. from the Philippines years earlier. She was murdered on February 21st, 1977. Her body was discovered under a mattress that had been set on fire inside of her Chicago area apartment. The police were unable to determine a motive because an autopsy revealed that the most common motive for this kind of crime against a woman was clearly not the motivation in this case, and it did not look like anything had been stolen. The authorities did find a note that stated Teresita was planning to get theater tickets for someone with initials AS. They didn't know who AS was, and here's another case where a handwritten note serves as evidence. The big break in the case came 5.5 months after the murder. Detective Joe Stahula got a call from a physician and his wife. The wife had worked with Teresita. The couple remained anonymous in this Unsolved Mystery segment, going by fictional names. The wife stated that she had taken a nap one night at the hospital and had an encounter with Teresita, which she thought was a dream at first. 2 weeks later, while she was sleeping in her own bed, her husband said she talked to him in her sleep and spoke in a strange voice. He asked her for her name, and she said Teresita. As Teresita, she told him to go to the police. She said the killer was Alan Showery, an orderly at the hospital where both the wife and Teresita worked together. When he didn't go to the authorities, there was another incident that occurred. Teresita, through his wife, asked him what was causing him a delay, and he said he needed evidence, so she informed him that Alan had taken pieces of her jewelry and given them to his girlfriend. The authorities learned from Teresita's co-workers that an orderly named Alan Showery was expected to repair her TV on the night she was killed. Alan denied killing her at first, but when Teresita's family examined jewelry Alan had given his girlfriend and recognized some items of their dead loved ones, Alan finally confessed. He was sentenced to 14 years. This case inspired a 1996 TV movie called Voice from the Grave, starring Kevin Dobson and Megan Ward. In fact, quite a few cases aired on Unsolved Mysteries went on to become TV movies. They include Without a Kiss Goodbye, Victim of Love, the Shannon Moore Story, To Save the Children, and the Shannon Doherty film Gone in the Night. I feel like there are probably more examples that I can't think of right now. Now, did Teresita come to the wife in a vision? Did she possess the wife and reveal evidence to solve her murder? I don't know. I can't help but wonder if it's possible that the wife, having worked with Teresita, might have overheard something that made its way into her dreams. I mean, from what I'm hearing from this episode, it sounds like there were coworkers who knew that Alan was expected at Teresita's house. Maybe some of this information was leaked at work. I'd love to think that Teresita solved her own murder. That's what I want to believe. I just have this little nagging sense that it's possible that something else was involved, but who knows. Now here's a case that has a beautiful ending. It's the case of the gas leak at West End Baptist Church in Beatrice, Nebraska. Several members of a choir all arrived late to practice on March 1st, 1950, due to little things that came up, such as homework, a radio show, car problems, etc. These choir members were not in the habit of being late and actually were expected to be on time, so this was very unusual for even one person to be late, let alone every single person. But it was a good thing they weren't punctual that Wednesday night, because there was an explosion at the church 2 minutes after they should have been there. One of the choir members saw the explosion right as she was stepping out of her house. This is viewed as too miraculous to be a coincidence because of the insane odds of every single person in that choir being spared due to their own individual reasons. And also amazing was the way the sheet music fell from the sky and a choir book landed in front of one woman intact. The next case I will discuss also has a happy ending, but it could be a very triggering case for a lot of people because we have nightmares like this happening far too often in America and usually ending with bloodshed instead of prayers of thanks to God. It's the story of the Cokeville hostage situation, which inspired the Richard Thomas movie To Save the Children. And by the way, I plan to discuss another Richard Thomas movie next week that will also be triggering to a lot of people for a similar reason, so just a heads up. In Cokeville, Wyoming, David Young and his wife hold an elementary school hostage, threatening anyone who tries to escape. David is attached to a contraption that will cause a massive tragedy if he makes any sudden moves. The children and teachers pray to make it out alive. At one point, David turns the contraption over to his wife as he leaves the room, so now the contraption is attached to her. She starts to get agitated, and her jerky movements causes an explosion. But due to a miracle, she is the only one killed. David is later found to be dead as well by his own hand. All of the students and teachers survive. This is attributed to the fact that the windows were open, the kids were kept at a distance from the contraption so as not to brush up against David and make him mad, and also the fact that the contraption didn't fully detonate. Ultimately, the prevailing theory is that divine intervention was involved. There were a couple of kids who claimed they saw an angel who advised them to move from the place they were sitting just before the explosion. And there was also an imprint of what looked like an angel on a wall in the school. So those are the 5 stories I wanted to discuss today. A few of them were incredibly sad, but a couple of them had a happy ending, and I love the happy endings. So I hope you all have a great night and hope to see you for my next video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on these cases in the comments. Take care, everyone.